Freeze, Rottweiler, let the doughboy go.
What goes on here? We are doing nothing unlawful.
Says you.
I've got a warrant.
I've got a gun.
I got a problem with this.
As time goes on, I'm starting to carve a niche for myself. I think I'm gonna be the guy who makes a stand for Canadian cartoons, at least the stuff most folks overlook. I keep finding shows I want to talk about, and everyone else seems too scared to say they liked something from Canada. Well, at any rate, today we're taking a look at Dog City, Jim Henson's Dog City to be exact. A loving parody of the film noir genre, it follows Ace Hart, Private Eye Dog in the eponymous Dog City, a city populated by dogs, who would have guessed? Aided by Chief of Police Rosie O'Gravy and wet-nosed news pup Eddie, they solve cases and bust crimes, often crossing paths with mob boss Bugsy Vile and his gang. But that's just one half of the show. It's actually a show within a show, and where the Henson crew plays their hand. The world of Ace Hart was created by mild-mannered animator Elliot Shag. Background, stories, characters, he was a one-man band way before it was cool. Him and Ace also frequently interact with each other, often discussing cartoon tropes and cliches. And depending on where a story's going, Elliot draws up ideas that could either help Ace, slow him down, or just to make things interesting. If your mind goes to the Looney Tunes short Duck Amuck or even Rabbit Rampage, then we're on the same wavelength. Elliot's also got his own stuff going on in his apartment building, with his friends and neighbors serving as the basis for his characters. Like they say, write what you know. Premiering in September 1992, it aired on Fox Kids in the States and on Global TV in Canada. Quick tangent here, I am just stunned at how many cartoons Global aired back in the 80s and 90s. Original productions, Kids WB fare like Freakazoid and Animaniacs, even anime like Sailor Moon and Digimon, but it all passed me by. I just knew it as the Young and the Restless channel. And despite Dog City's short run, Global had a spot for it in its schedule right up to 2001. Reruns also aired on YTV until 2000 and on Teletoon for its first couple of years. Took me until February 2023 to give it a look, prompted by a question I got for my Q&A video actually. And when I got through the second episode, I thought, I'm gonna make a video on this show, aren't I? Lo and behold, I was right. So how did Canada get attached to this? Well, if you didn't know, Jim Henson and Canada have quite the history with each other, going as far back as the 1960s.
What are you eating? Savory, succulent McGarry sausages. Want a bite? Yeah!
In the 80s, when putting together Fraggle Rock, him and his crew chose to do it in Canada because it just felt right.
When we came up with the idea of doing it in Canada, we all just loved it, and it seems right for the program.
And years later, with the 2020s reboot, they did that up in Calgary. That's pretty cool. But Toronto, my hometown, lots of stuff happened there. OG Fraggle Rock, Muppet Family Christmas, the Sesame Street movie Follow That Bird, and lest we forget Sesame Street Canada / Sesame Park, don't even get me started on that. Before Dog City was a show, it started out as a special, filmed in Toronto over the course of 2 weeks in November 1988. It aired as part of the short-lived Jim Henson Hour, being one of the last things Henson did before his passing. Out of everything he had worked on, he said Dog City was his favorite project.
You know, I think Dog City is my favorite show of all the shows ever done.
I gave it a watch after seeing the series twice over, and I can get behind what he said. It's pretty darn good. There's a weird feeling seeing a show's backdoor pilot after watching the show, but it's like you're seeing things unfold in an alternate timeline. It also gives context for things you didn't really think about, like say how Mad Dog waxes philosophical the few times he talks. It came from here, and it made a lot more sense.
Bugsy Dumb don't know the meaning of the word lost.
Lost. Adjective, denoting something strayed or misplaced, as in, I've lost my kerchief. Might you have seen it?
Wasn't it Shakespeare who wrote, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave, when first we practice to deceive"?
though I wonder where they got the idea to take this special and not only expand on it, but make it a hybrid show with all these different layers. Kudos to whoever rallied for it though, cause it makes Dog City very unique, and adding to that is all the different parties who came together to make this happen. For major players, you had Nelvana in Toronto and the Henson crew in New York, and they worked very closely with each other. The voice cast was Toronto-based, but for season 1, they were coached by Muppet performer Catherine Mullen back in the Big Apple. One voice in here is James Rankin, who plays Frisky, but he knew a thing or two about puppets himself. He's worked with a few Henson alumni and did puppeteering for shows like Groundling Marsh, Puppets Who Kill, and arguably his best role, Larry DeBug in Freaky Stories. Love that guy! The UK's Channel 4 also helped with season 1. You might remember them from my Bob and Margaret video, and just like with that show, they bailed on Dog City after season 1. By the way, you should check out my interview with the creators of Bob and Margaret if you don't want Mouthless Margaret here coming after ya. Another name I noticed here was Brad Goodchild, who served as an animator, but he'd later be a driving force behind Pepper Ann, another show I can't shut up about. And a weird one for me personally, one of my old college teachers, Scott Glynn, also animated for Dog City. If I ever reconnect with him, he's gonna hate me for all the questions I got for him. To talk about the characters a bit, we've got winners on both sides. The Muppet cast are what you'd expect from the Henson wheelhouse, full of detail and expertly brought to life. These guys are just as real as you or me, maybe even more so. Trips me up knowing Elliot shares a performer with the baby from Dinosaurs and Elmo. And Artie's performer? He'd be Sesame Street's head writer in the late 2000s, early 2010s. That's nuts, isn't it? On the cartoon side, everyone's super charming too, and even if they barely show up, they still leave an impression. One of my favorites had to be Baron von Rottweiler. He's initially billed as Ace's arch rival, so you think he'd play a major role, but he's really just there to get blown up by his sidekick Leon. It's a shame, cause he's got a great design and is lovingly voiced by Dan Hennessy. You might know him as the Chief in the original Inspector Gadget, but I grew up hearing him as Braveheart on Care Bears. Despite how little Rottweiler's used, Hennessy still brings his A-game, and you can tell he's having way too much fun.
Sorry to leave you hanging here, huh? Leon, we really have to talk.
Bugsy's the real arch-rival here, and he's not quite what you'd expect at first glance. He's devoted to the art of senseless crime and violence, and believe me, it does get pretty out there, but he knows what's up. He's also got this laugh that's not really a laugh, more a Muttley-esque wheeze, and it kills me every time.
There are 1,000 squeaky toys in the Naked City.
It's how I laugh when I find something really funny, so I end up laughing like him when he laughs. But he's got some layers to his character too. For one, the big guy Bruiser is his nephew, but he's also got a feline sweetheart named Kitty. These two genuinely care for each other, and Bugsy would do almost anything to keep her happy. Check out the episode Cats and Dogs for a great character study on the two. It's written by the co-creator of Dinosaurs, so you know it's good stuff. Kitty's also pretty great. She's materialistic and rather not get her hands dirty, but if she wasn't around, Bugsy's crew would fall to pieces, and they all know it. Now, one of the most striking things about this show is the artwork. A lot of the backgrounds and set pieces are really breathtaking stuff, and I love the detail of the moon having a big old paw print in it. I got in touch with one of the show's layout artists, Glenn Chadwick, and he told me the art direction was inspired by American artist Edward Hopper. You ever see the 1942 painting Nighthawks or one of its countless homages? Yeah, enough said. Hopper was an avid movie lover, and in turn, his work has inspired a number of filmmakers and artists throughout the years. Dog City's crew got to draw a lot of dramatic angles and shots, and Chadwick said from an artistic standpoint, it was a lot more interesting than some other Nelvana fare. And that style makes an impression right from the show's intro, which is fantastic. It immediately gets you right in the mood, and helping is the music done by Philip Balsam. He sadly passed away in 2023, but his legacy will last forever, and this song is a testament to that. It was stuck in my head for a week after I first heard it, and I could listen to it all day long. The kind of song that inspires people to pick up an instrument themselves. Expect no less from a man who wrote 194 Fraggle Rock tunes. My favorite bit of the intro is at the end, when you see Jim Henson's name drawn in the scene and then it cuts to Elliot. For first timers, it makes your brain go, oh look at that, it's a Muppet, and he was drawing the whole time, oh that's awesome! Another great bit of art is in the episode You Gotta Have Heart. Here, Elliot's been fired and is workshopping new avenues for Ace. Kinda wild he gets to keep the rights to his show, but anyway, he comes up with an Ace Heart comic book, and is this ever legit? I mean, look at it! It doesn't last long, and it's a shame. I'd love to see a whole episode that looked like this, and if Dog City had comics like these in real life, I'd buy them in a heartbeat. No, I'm not apologizing for that one. Being a fan of Batman, especially the '92 cartoon, Ace's stories gave off a lot of similar vibes. Apart from the atmosphere, 3 of Dog City's writers either went to work on Batman and other DC shows, or were doing it already. Those guys being Rich Fogel, Robert Skur, and Marty Eisenberg. There's even a whole episode devoted to superheroes with the Watchdog and his creator, Fob K9. Yeah, I see what you did there. This one was written by Eisenberg and Skur, who actually wrote 3 episodes of Batman the Animated Series together. Aw man, they did Lockup? That's one of my favorites right there. And is it a coincidence Dog City and Batman debuted the same month, same year, on the same network? Probably, but still cool. Dog City also reminded me a lot of one of my favorite video game series, Sly Cooper. Mostly Sly 1, as it's more cartoony and has the Mesa City world with the gangster dogs. Both take cues from film noir, comics, have worlds with talking animals, the chief of police is the hero's potential love interest, Sly and Ace have a knack for narration, there's even a bulldog mob boss, and the term Dogfather gets used in both. Just like how DreamWorks The Bad Guys is the closest we'll get to a Sly movie, Dog City is the closest we'll get to a Sly cartoon. Done before Sly was even a thought. So all that's pretty sweet, but my favorite aspect is the angle of art imitating life and vice versa. Seeing what goes on in Elliot's life and how it influences his work, it feels so natural, notably for the characters. The first episode introduces us to Artie, the second gives us Colleen, and the third has Bruno. Each one getting the time to make their mark, and no other characters present either. I honestly didn't know some characters were based on Elliot's friends till they spelled it out for me later in the season. Either that's subtle storytelling or I'm just stupid. Ace is basically Elliot's alter ego, and you see how these two rub off on each other. Ace claims he works alone, but he needs Elliot, and when something's got Elliot down, Ace is there to get him back on his feet. I've definitely talked to some of my characters once or twice, and I feel some of them have influenced how I do things in life, so I relate a lot to this. And typically when a show breaks from the action, it has me itching to get back to it, but some of the show's best moments are when they'd pause a scene and discuss just how they'd get through it. What was Ace thinking? What was Elliot gonna do? Would they see eye to eye or butt heads for a bit? Would an outside influence change things on the fly, and how would they deal with that? And what if they write themselves into a corner? I don't know about animators, but this is definitely what the mind of a manga artist looks like 24/7. Always cooking up new stories with deadlines and executive meddling, writing at the seat of their pants, and trying to make it all look totally seamless. If you look at it that way, Dog City's basically an anime, and I'm just gonna say it, Elliot Shag is a better writer than Akira Toriyama. He certainly doesn't retcon lore when he feels like it or names his characters based on the contents of his fridge that week. I'm kidding! I'm kidding! With a show about dogs, you're going to expect some dog-related jokes, and this show has them in spades, and so do I apparently. Some are truly inspired, and others are downright stupid, but in the best possible way. I don't care how stupid this one gets me every time.
Follow that car!
Don't look now, but I think we're being tailed.
Another good one is when Elliot's asleep at his desk, Ace wakes him up, and this happens.
Elliot!
That just made me smile. I think any dog lover can relate to that one. So cute! Film noir's no stranger to firearms, and while they shockingly do show up here, Elliot's not a big fan of them. Nah, rolled up newspapers are the way to go.
Bad dog! Bad dog!
Come on, boys. Give it to him good. Oh, joy. Oh, ecstasy.
Cops will bust an operation and they all have papers at the ready, and get this, They're called the SWAT team. I just think that's hilarious, but it's also kind of weird how they read these things on top of using them as weapons. Speaking of messed up jokes, one episode has a stand-in for an electric chair, and it's a wired up doggy bed, like, wow. Another episode shows some text in a book, and the best shows always have something stashed away in them. Here, it's the chorus to You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, word for word. There's also a mountain of dog puns, and you know what? They're all pretty good too. They're the kind of puns where you go, well, of course, you'd be crazy not to make that pun. The only one they don't do is, well, it's pretty obvious, but that's where the special has you covered. They didn't forget that one.
Welcome to family programming, folks.
They also use oh my dog, for dog's sake, swear to dog, and I love when Ace says dog because he's got a bit of an accent to it.
Oh, my dog. Oh, my dog. Oh, my dog.
It's creeping its way into my personal vocabulary because of course it is. Some other favorites include Haagen-Dazs ice cream, Boney Island amusement park, and instead of the Beatles, we got the Beagles. Earth isn't even called Earth, it's ARF. Alright boys, pack it in. This show has you all beat on the dog jokes. But there's jokes not centered on dog puns. A lot of regular puns, observational humor, meta humor, adult jokes, film references, and most of it had me laughing out loud. Coupled with well-written dialogue that flows real naturally, you've got a show I think is endlessly rewatchable. And as we jump into season 2, it gets even better. For one, we get a brand new intro, new animation, a slightly new music arrangement, almost like this was an anime or something. You don't see that every day with Western cartoons, especially in the early 90s. I got in touch with someone who helped put this intro together, Steve Whitehouse, and well, this doesn't really have to do with the art, but I gotta share this for posterity. Steve was the overseas supervisor for the animators in South Korea, and one of them went by the name Bing Bing, which apparently means crazy in Korean. Steve went to Korea to meet the crew, and after a bit of drinking, they went to an outdoor food stall. While waiting for their orders, Bing Bing reached into a tank, grabbed a live octopus, and just took a bite out of it. So yeah, this intro is pretty great. The OG intro is still my favorite, but I love how they went through the trouble of making this. Look at how happy this dude is to sniff out some clues. And again, my favorite bit is at the end. Last time it was Elliot by himself, now there's a whole mess of Muppets, and it just perks me up seeing all their faces. It's also great payoff for folks who watched season 1 to see Elliot's world expand like that. Season 2 came with a few more changes, mainly visual touch-ups. Mad Dog changed from a dark green to red, likely to make him stand out more in the nighttime settings. He also got a teensy bit more to do. He went from saying a whole line last season, which apparently was enough to get him top billing, but here he says maybe 5 more things and even gets a whole episode to himself. I also noticed Rosie got a lot prettier. She was fine before, but they paid attention to her eyes and hair, fur, whatever, and it looks a lot nicer. She also got a slight personality change. Colleen served as the original basis for Rosie, but come season 2, she's moved away, and Elliot is in a creative slump. In her place, they introduce Artie's mom, Terry, a headstrong businesswoman who's actually played by Colleen's performer. Elliot uses her as the new basis for Rosie, who in turn gets more no-nonsense, and that's great! Characters that develop over time usually take on different inspirations like that. And while I did like Colleen, she was a little flat. Bringing Terry into the mix expanded on like 3 different characters, and she's a lot more interesting. I love this joke they did to introduce her.
That building is coming down today, or it's your tail. Got it? Got it.
She's also single, and Elliot develops a little crush for her, and in her debut, that bled into his work a bit too much.
Ace Hot always gets his dog.
And I always get mine.
Moving on from that, Elliot also dons a Hawaiian shirt from here on out, but I prefer the unassuming animator look. Some think that might have been done to make him more hip and happening, and if that's true, it's pretty harmless. He certainly wasn't busting out a skateboard and sunglasses, not yet anyways. But if you loved season 1, season 2 is a much stronger package. Character development, more intricate jokes and homages. They even take a joke story title from last season and make it the title of an actual actual episode. It's exactly what you want to see. A shame it's only 10 episodes as opposed to season 1's 13. The next season had even less episodes, but this is where things start to go wrong. Dog City underwent a major overhaul for the final season in the perfect example of jumping the shark. No, wait. This is when the show went to the dogs. Duh. Everything that made it good is tossed out the window, and the writing took a shocking nosedive. The film noir stuff has very little focus, sidelined for new rotating segments focused more on slapstick and sitcom plot lines. The artwork and Muppetry is still quality, but everyone feels off. Eddie went from endearing to flat out annoying, and Rosie's mainly featured in segments where she's looking after her niece, Dot, who only ever says one word, why, and it gets old fast.
Why?
Shut up! There's also this cat burglar and dumb cop called Eve and Steven, and they don't even look like they're from the same show, in-universe or otherwise. Their shtick also wears out quick. We cut back to them 3 times in the premiere, and the punchline is just, wow, cats sure are dumb and incompetent. And you know, considering Elliot's landlady is a cat, the man is walking on thin ice. The most notable thing I can say is Eve was voiced by Reno Romano, the OG Tuxedo Mask in Sailor Moon, the Batman in The Batman, and he even showed up in the Mario movie. Thank dog things didn't stop for him here. What few cases we do get here are a lot more supernatural sci-fi stuff like Jurassic Bark and Bark to the Future. And Ace used to be vehemently against anything science fiction. There was a whole episode devoted to that. But here, he doesn't seem to care. Segueing from those titles, even the dog puns don't feel right. One time Artie goes, "It's raining cats and dogs," whatever that means. And I'm just here like, how do you not know what that means? The dog should know what that... Whatever. Everyone in Elliot's world has been dumbed down to the lowest common denominator. They'll break out into song and dance for no reason, and Elliot is far removed from his old self. Like he lost his backbone and gave in to the man, every creative's worst nightmare. I saw so much of myself in this guy, and not 2 episodes into the season, he's unironically playing Wheels on the Bus on a record. If I wasn't questioning every decision made here, I was getting secondhand embarrassment. Watching this season made me physically cringe, and it takes a lot to get me to do that. Just what happened here? At first I thought it was due to a change in staff, but most of the crew is still here, which makes the whole thing feel more like a cruel joke. Watching the premiere, I was waiting for the moment they'd go, "Haha, got you, we weren't really going in this direction." But that moment never came. Right when they introduced the Mr. Mookie show is where I went, oh no, this is actually happening. If you asked me if season 3 is necessary to watch, I'd say no. Season 2 has a good enough ending with a satisfying sense of finality. Obviously I can't stop you, so if you're curious to see how it went downhill, be my guest. It's only 8 episodes, but man, it felt like it was stretched out into dog years cause this was soul draining to get through. Feels like they just ran out of steam by the end, which sucks cause I feel they could have done even more with the original format. Just spitballing here, but a 2 or 3-parter epic or maybe even a season-long mystery? Those would have been awesome. The possibilities with this show are endless. I don't know why it changed, but I do have a theory for its short run. On Fox, it stayed promptly in the 8 a.m. time slot, typically being the first show in the lineup, and depending on where you lived, that might be 7 a.m. Most kids are still asleep by then on the weekends. Even weird kids like me weren't really at it till 7:30. But you don't put your heavy hitters in that slot, and I wouldn't be surprised if shows like Batman, Tiny Toons, and Animaniacs stole its thunder. Call it a hunch, but this show also looked and sounded expensive. Higher-ups probably didn't want to keep putting cash into it after a while. It's a tale as old as time, and the ending never gets any better. As I went along, I wanted to learn more about the show's production, maybe be the first guy to crack the case of how this all came about. I reached out to anyone I could who worked on it, but one name barked back at me was John Van Bruggen. He was the show's director for seasons 1 and 2 and was heavily involved with its development. He's worked in Canadian cartoons since the 80s alongside his wife Arna Selznick, who actually storyboarded for Dog City. Between them, they've worked on Clone High, Care Bears, Bob and Margaret, and they also made the Cool Man shorts for the anthology show Fun Pack. Basically the Canadian equivalent to Oh Yeah Cartoons or What a Cartoon for you Americans. That was one of my favorites, and I still go, that's cool, man, even now. My good friend's dad, who I've mentioned on this channel before, has been in the animation game just as long as Bruggen, and they've worked on a few shows together. He told me he was at Nelvana when Bruggen worked on Dog City and recalls him regaling the boys back home about how great it was going to New York and working with the Muppet crew. Ooh, look at me. He tried reaching out to Bruggen for me, but never heard back. And it's insane, cause Bruggen and Selznick have social media outlets and a couple websites, and I tried it all. I even went on LinkedIn and they apparently viewed my profile, but that was it. So close and yet so far. I don't even think Ace Hart can solve this case, man. I'm just thinking they don't want to talk about Dog City. Probably brings up war flashbacks or something. Like, come on, guys. I'm not crazy. Okay, maybe I'm a little crazy, but I'm not dangerous. If I ever hear back, I'll make a follow-up in some form. Now, if you want to watch Dog City, well, it's kinda scattered all over the place and not in a good way. The YouTube channel Retro Rerun has it, but they cut out the intro and the credits, which really bugs me. A while later, they started re-uploading the show with those intact, but they gave up 11 episodes in. They also uploaded episode 2 twice, completely missed episode 5, and episode 3 was in an aspect ratio barely suitable for ants. It wouldn't be my first choice. The show was also on the streaming service Tubi, but the first season was missing, and the same goes for iTunes. It also had an episode or two on VHS tapes and on a DVD in Australia in 2006, but that's it. I may or may not have a link to a playlist somewhere if you're interested, upscaled to 1080p, and if that goes down, it might be on Amazon. The Dog City special is on DVD, and I also saw it on Tubi at the time of this recording. As with most shows I make videos on, I can't recommend this enough. You like Jim Henson, Canadian animation, film noir, comics, stuff that makes you think, laugh, dogs? You're gonna love this. Like I said before, I feel like they only scratched the surface of what this show could have done. Dare I say I'd love to see a reboot of sorts. With how far we've come with storytelling and animation, not to mention puppet technology, you could do so much more than you thought possible. But what we've got is still pretty sweet. This is what you call a hidden gem, and at this point, it's begging to be dug up. There's some dog puns in there somewhere, but I think y'all have suffered enough. Just make sure you watch Dog City, okay? Take it from me, you'll be glad you did. Thanks for giving this video a watch, everybody. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed what you saw, feel free to give this video a like, share with a friend, subscribe, check out my social media pages, blah blah blah, all that stuff I always go on about. And if you want to support me even further, feel free to check out my Patreon page. You'll get access to behind-the-scenes blogs, early access to videos just like this one, and your name in the credits along with a verbal shout-out. Speaking of which, I'd like to give shout-outs today to Lars Niswant and Mystica Bell. Thanks so much for your support, guys. It really does mean a lot. And if any of you out there have watched Dog City, either before watching this video or after it, feel free to share your memories, favorite characters, anything that you can think of in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And an extra special thanks goes out to Steve Whitehouse and Glenn Chadwick. Thanks for giving into my crazy demands and helping make this video what it is. Your work on Dog City is very much appreciated. And while you're here, feel free to check out some of the videos I got on screen. I'm sure one of them is related to Canadian content, and I'm sure I'd be happy if you gave it a watch. If not, well, whatever, I'd still like it if you watched it. And with all that said, I'll see you guys next time. Later.